D'Artagnan then returned home in thoughtful mood, finding a somewhat lively pleasure in carrying Mazarin's bag of money and thinking of that fine diamond which he had once called his own and which he had seen on the minister's finger that night. Should that diamond ever fall into my hands again, he reflected, I would turn it at once into money. I would buy with the proceeds certain lands around my father's chateau, which is a pretty place, well enough, but with no land to it at all, except a garden about the size of the Cemetery des Innocents, and I should wait in all my glory till some rich heiress, attracted by my good looks, rode along to marry me. Then I should like to have 3 sons. I should make the first a nobleman, like Athos, the second a good soldier, like Porthos, the third an excellent abbe, like Aramis. Faith, that would be a far better life than I led now, but Monsieur Mazarin is a mean wretch, who won't dispossess himself of his diamond in my favor." On entering the Rue Tiquetin, he heard a tremendous noise and found a dense crowd near the house. "Oh, oh," said he, "is the hotel on fire?" On approaching the hotel of the Row he found, however, that it was in front of the next house the mob was collected. The people were shouting and running about with torches. By the light of one of these torches D'Artagnan perceived men in uniform. He asked what was going on. He was told that 20 citizens, headed by one man, had attacked a carriage which was escorted by a troop of the cardinal's bodyguard, but a reinforcement having come up, the assailants had been put to flight, and the leader had taken refuge in the hotel next to his lodgings. The house was now being searched. In his youth D'Artagnan had often headed the bourgeoisie against the military, but he was cured of all those hot-headed propensities. Besides, he had the cardinal's 100 pistoles in his pocket. So he went into the hotel without a word. There he found Madeleine alarmed for his safety and anxious to tell him all the events of the evening, but he cut her short by ordering her to put his supper in his room and give him with it a bottle of good Burgundy. He took his key and candle and went upstairs to his bedroom. He had been contented, for the convenience of the house, to lodge in the 4th story, and truth obliges us even to confess that his chamber was just above the gutter and below the roof. His first care on entering it was to lock up in an old bureau with a new lock his bag of money, and then as soon as supper was ready he sent away the waiter, who brought it up and sat down to table, not to reflect on what had passed, as one might fancy. No, D'Artagnan considered that things are never well done when they are not reserved to their proper time. He was hungry, he supped. He went to bed. Neither was he one of those who think that the necessary silence of the night brings counsel with it. In the night he slept, but in the morning, refreshed and calm, he was inspired with his clearest views of everything. It was long since he had any reason for his morning's inspiration, but he always slept all night long. At daybreak he awoke and took a turn around his room. In 43, he said, just before the death of the late cardinal, I received a letter from Athos. Where was I then? Let me see. Oh, at the siege of Besançon I was in the trenches. He told me, let me think, what was it? That he was living on a small estate, but where? I was just reading the name of the place when the wind blew my letter away. I suppose to the Spaniards. There's no use in thinking any more about Athos. Let me see. With regard to Porthos, I received a letter from him. 2. He invited me to a hunting party on his property in the month of September, 1646. Unluckily, as I was then in Béarn, on account of my father's death, the letter followed me there. I had left Béarn when it arrived, and I never received it until the month of April, 1647, and as the invitation was for September, I can't accept it. Let me look for this letter. It must be with my title deeds. D'Artagnan opened an old casket, which stood in a corner of the room, and which was full of parchments referring to an estate during a period of 200 years lost to his family. He uttered an exclamation of delight, for the large handwriting of Porthos was discernible, and underneath some lines traced by his worthy spouse. D'Artagnan eagerly searched for the heading of this letter. It was dated from the Chateau du Vallon. Porthos had forgotten that any other address was necessary in his pride. He fancied that every one must know the Chateau du Vallon. "Devil take the vain fellow," said D'Artagnan. "However, I had better find him out first. Since he can't want money, Athos must have become an idiot by this time. From drinking, Aramis must have worn himself to a shadow of his former self by constant genuflexion." He cast his eyes again on the letter. There was a postscript: "I write by the same courier to our worthy friend Aramis in his convent." In his convent? What convent? There are about 200 in Paris and 3,000 in France, and then, perhaps, on entering the convent he changed his name. Ah, if I were but learned in theology, I should recollect what it was he used to dispute about with the curate of Montdidier and the superior of the Jesuits. When we were at Crèvecoeur, I should know what doctrine he leans to, and I should glean from that what saint he has adopted as his patron. Well, suppose I go back to the cardinal and ask him for a passport into all the convents one can find, even into the nunneries. It would be a curious idea, and maybe I should find my friend under the name of Achilles. But no, I should lose myself in the cardinal's opinion. Great people only thank you for doing the impossible. What's possible, they say, they can effect themselves. And they are right. But let us wait a little and reflect. I received a letter from him, the dear fellow, in which he even asked me for some small service, which, in fact, I rendered him. Yes, yes, but now what did I do with that letter?